There is a man sitting in a room right now with 3 degrees on his wall, a mind sharper than 90% of the people he knows, and $40 in his checking account. 20 minutes away, a man who dropped out of high school just closed on his second rental property. This is not fiction. This is not rare. This is happening in every city, on every street, right now. And if it makes you uncomfortable, good. Because comfort is exactly what has been keeping you broke. Today you are going to learn why raw intelligence is one of the worst predictors of wealth, why the very traits that make you smart are quietly sabotaging your bank account, and what the average, unremarkable, ordinary person understands about money that your IQ has never taught you. Stay until the end, because the last reason is the one nobody wants to admit about themselves. Let's start with the belief you have carried since childhood. The one that felt like a gift, but was actually a trap. You were told you were smart. Teachers praised you, parents bragged about you, and somewhere along the way, you absorbed a dangerous equation. Intelligence equals success. But money does not reward intelligence. Money rewards action, repetition, and risk tolerance. Intelligent people often overthink every decision until the window of opportunity closes. They analyze, they research, they calculate probabilities, and while they are still building the perfect spreadsheet, the average person has already invested, already started the business, already made the mistake, learned from it, and moved on. Psychologists call this analysis paralysis, and it disproportionately affects highly intelligent people because their brains are wired to find flaws. A smart mind is a machine built to detect risk, and in nature that kept our ancestors alive. But in modern finance, that same machine convinces you that every opportunity is too risky, every investment is too uncertain, and every leap is better left untaken. The average person, lacking that hyperactive risk detector, jumps. And more often than statistics would predict, jumping wins. Now let's talk about ego, because this is where it gets uncomfortable. Intelligent people build their entire identity around being right. Being right in arguments, being right in predictions, being right about the economy, right about the stock market, right about why that business idea won't work. But wealth does not care about who is right. Wealth cares about who is willing to be wrong, publicly, repeatedly, without their identity collapsing. Every successful investor, every entrepreneur, every self-made millionaire has a graveyard of failed attempts behind them. They were wrong dozens of times before they were right once. But an intelligent person's ego cannot tolerate being visibly wrong. So they stay silent, they stay safe, they stay employed, they stay comfortable. And comfort, as we said, is the silent killer of wealth. The average person who has made peace with not always being the smartest one in the room has already made peace with failure. And people who have made peace with failure take the actions that intelligent people are too afraid to take. There is a second layer to this ego problem, one that rarely gets discussed. Intelligent people are terrified of looking desperate. Asking for a raise feels desperate. Asking for investment capital feels desperate. Admitting they don't understand something and need help feels like a crack in the image they've spent their whole life building. So they wait. They wait until they can approach the opportunity from a position of obvious strength. And by the time that position arrives, someone less concerned with appearances has already taken it. The average person, never having built their identity around appearing effortlessly competent, asks the awkward question, makes the desperate-sounding request, and gets the yes that pride would never have allowed the intelligent person to receive. Here is the third trap, and this one is subtle. Intelligent people are drawn to complexity, because complexity feels intellectually satisfying. They want the complicated investment strategy, the exotic asset class, the clever tax loophole, the sophisticated trading algorithm. Meanwhile, Wealth is built through boring, repetitive, almost embarrassingly simple actions. Spend less than you earn. Invest consistently. Let compound interest work for decades. Avoid debt that does not generate income. There is no PhD required for any of this. In fact, a PhD often gets in the way, because a brilliant mind assumes that if the solution is this simple, it must be missing something. So intelligent people search for the secret, the hack, the insider strategy, while the average person simply does the boring thing for 30 years and ends up wealthy without ever understanding why it worked. Warren Buffett said investing is simple but not easy. Intelligent people hear simple and assume it means insufficient. They complicate what should stay simple, and in doing so, they sabotage their own progress. Now, the fourth reason, the one that stings the most. Intelligent people are addicted to potential. They have been told their whole life that they have so much potential, and somewhere in their psychology, potential became a substitute for achievement. It feels good to imagine the business you could build, the investments you could make, the empire you could design in your mind. Planning feels like progress. Thinking feels like doing. But potential that is never converted into consistent, unglamorous action is worth exactly $0. The average person does not have the luxury of living inside their own imagined greatness. They simply work the job, save what they can, invest a little every month, and 20 years later, their unremarkable consistency has outpaced the intelligent person's brilliant, unfinished plans. This is one of the most painful truths in behavioral finance. Mediocre execution of a simple plan will always beat a brilliant plan that never leaves the notebook. Let's go deeper into the psychology, because there is a scientific explanation for all of this. Behavioral economists have identified something called the intelligence trap, first documented extensively by psychologist David Robson. His research found that highly intelligent people are actually more susceptible to certain cognitive biases, not less, because they are skilled at constructing sophisticated justifications for their own bad decisions. A person of average intelligence might make an impulsive financial mistake and simply admit it was a mistake. A highly intelligent person will construct an elaborate, convincing argument for why their mistake was actually a reasonable, well-calculated decision. And because the argument is so intellectually impressive, they believe it themselves. This is called motivated reasoning. And it means smart people don't just make bad financial decisions, they defend them with the same brilliance that made them appear successful in school. The very intelligence that was supposed to protect them becomes the weapon that convinces them to stay the course on a sinking ship. This connects directly to something psychologists call the sunk cost spiral, and intelligent people fall into it harder than anyone. Because they can construct such convincing arguments, they can also convince themselves to stay in a failing investment, a dying business idea, or a stagnant career far longer than an average person would tolerate. They keep pouring money and time into something because their intelligence keeps generating new reasons why it will eventually work, when a less analytical person would have simply felt the discomfort, cut their losses, and walked away months earlier. Analytical brilliance, in this case, becomes a trap that keeps them financially bleeding while feeling completely rational about it. There is also the matter of emotional regulation, something intelligence tests have never measured. Wealth building requires an almost boring level of emotional discipline. When the market crashes, the wealthy stay invested. When everyone around them is panicking, they remain calm. When a business venture fails, they analyze without spiraling into shame. Intelligent people, precisely because they think in complex, layered, and often anxious patterns, tend to feel financial setbacks more intensely. Their minds spin out scenarios of catastrophe, replaying every decision, questioning their own competence. And this emotional volatility leads to reactive decisions, panic selling, abandoning good strategies too early, or freezing entirely out of fear of making another mistake. The average person, less burdened by relentless self-analysis, often rides out the storm simply because they were not sophisticated enough to imagine all the ways it could go wrong. Let's talk about one more devastating pattern: deferred gratification inversion. You would assume intelligent people are better at delaying gratification, since intelligence correlates with planning ability. But in wealth psychology, something strange happens. Intelligent people often delay the wrong things. They delay taking action, delay starting the business, delay investing until conditions are perfect, delay asking for the raise until they feel fully qualified. But they do not delay lifestyle upgrades. The moment their income increases, their spending increases to match it, a phenomenon called lifestyle creep. And their intelligence actually makes this worse because they can rationalize every purchase as a smart investment in their image, their networking, their future opportunities. Meanwhile, the average earner who never had impressive justifications available to them simply lives beneath their means because they never learned to argue themselves into overspending. And finally, there is social comparison. Quiet, but relentless. Intelligent people tend to measure themselves against the most accomplished people they know, not the average person on the street. This means no matter how much wealth they accumulate, it never feels like enough. Because there is always someone smarter, someone with a better title, someone with a more impressive portfolio to compare themselves to. This chronic sense of insufficiency drives some intelligent people toward reckless risk in an attempt to catch up quickly, and drives others toward paralysis, convinced they'll never measure up, so why bother trying at all? The average person, measuring their progress only against their own past, feels proud of small wins, celebrates the first $1,000 saved, and that emotional reward keeps them moving forward instead of stuck in a comparison trap with no finish line. So what does the average wealth-building person actually do differently? They embrace boring consistency over intellectual novelty. They take action before they feel fully informed, understanding that motion creates information that thinking alone never will. They treat failure as data, not identity. They automate their savings and investing, so willpower is never required. They ask for help without shame. They surround themselves with people who have already achieved what they want, rather than people who validate their excuses. And most importantly, they understand a truth that intelligence often obscures. Wealth is not built in the mind. It is built in behavior, repeated relentlessly over time, regardless of how you feel about it on any given day. If you recognized yourself somewhere in this video, in the overthinking, the perfectionism, the addiction to complexity, the fear of being visibly wrong or visibly desperate, understand that this is not a permanent diagnosis. It is a pattern, and patterns can be interrupted. The next time you catch yourself researching for the 10th hour instead of acting, the next time your ego whispers that you need more certainty before you begin, remember the average person who is already 3 steps ahead of you, not because they are smarter, but because they simply started. Intelligence built the excuse. It's time to let discipline build the outcome. If this video shifted something in how you see yourself, hit subscribe, because we break down the hidden psychology behind money, power, and success every single week, and you do not want to miss what's coming next. Turn on notifications, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the next one.